Well, this big old thing was in the way, and I could have bought one for a van for the LBZ, but I decided to take both the ones I had, cut them apart, and voila, make a new one. So I'll weld that up, and well, I might just test fit it first and see if the hose fits. I'm thinking it's gonna be good. The hose is a little bit too long, but that's okay because all the other things are too long too. When we did the trans mount, we just re-drilled the holes, put them in the cross member. Well, the thing is, the transmission, everything's a little too high. We're gonna have to cut that huge mound off there, off the top, and just basically build a plate that goes down. So the transmission will actually be an inch and a half or so, maybe a little bit more lower, which will fix the problem that we have with the yoke. And it'll line up pretty good with the rear end. I don't know if I showed you guys, but I made this a few months ago, and I picked up a stack for this thing. Probably gonna run it out and put it in the corner. We'll see. The LML Y bridge off of the other motor, and I moved all the lines out of the way, and there's a lot more on this motor. Well, it turns out that the turbo is actually a little bit lower and closer, so I ended up kind of beating the backside in, moving it in, and still not enough room to even get the intake on, so I'm gonna have to buy an aftermarket one or remake it, but the LBZ one's much cheaper, so I might just buy one. This piece is actually off of the van, and it's off the LML, and it fits right over onto the LBZ, if anybody's wondering. But yeah, looking pretty okay. So I got the pieces welded together, and I've got to say, if there's one skill that you should pick up, it's probably TIG welding, if you're into this kind of thing. Okay, so this is how it's gonna sit. I still need to weld a plate on the back, but what I'm going to do is I'll put it on, weld it, and then I have to drill a hole and tap it because I'm gonna run it into this turbo line. This is for the coolant for the turbo. Not too bad for an oil-soaked diesel part. Hey, it looks like it fits good. And we got the truck lifted up, about to pull the cross member off and show you what we're working with. It was just 8 bolts bolted right to the side of the frame. There was some nuts on the inside, so I didn't even have to hold it. Basically what I'm going to do, cut this whole section off and lower it down. Normally blast this thing off with the plasma, but my air compressor is all the way in the back, so this will have to do. I got this piece off. That's a lot of grease or something. Rubber? I think that's rubber. Okay, we're up in place. I'm gonna throw 2 bolts on each side, and then I'll let down the transmission, see where it sits, and then we'll see where we got to put the plate, or even if it's gonna actually fit. Well, looking a little close. I might actually have to notch that cross member out. I'm gonna lower it and see what happens. Wow, that is pretty close. All right in there. That should be good. Let's check everything else out. Intercooler piping was about 1.5 inches too long compared to what I had made it to before. Now it kind of looks like pretty close. Should go on. Dropped it out the bottom, but that's okay. And the that 10mm bolt was pretty close to the firewall before, and it's right back where it's supposed to be. That was the problem. I'm thinking that basically what I'm gonna have to do is notch out this cross member where it goes in and then up, and then have a plate that comes off so I have enough room to get the nuts in. Probably not gonna do that today, but I can now lower the trans and measure the drive shaft so that I can get a drive shaft on its way. It should take about 3 to 4 weeks to get built, so I want to do it as fast as possible. So the yoke didn't actually hit the floor before, but it only had about a 1/2 inch or so. But yeah, now it's, I mean, all the room in the world. As long as it clears the cross members, we're good to go. I like how as I keep working on this, less and less stuff is here. Like literally just keep stripping everything. I'm gonna have to add wires for the lights and everything, but I mean, that's nothing compared to what was underneath this thing before. You barely could see anything. Even moving the motor back, I have to remake both the pipes. This one is going to be a lot more forward because I have to change out the Y bridge for the LBZ one. The LML one just is all in the way, and it's too much work to modify for what it costs. This one on the LML, the turbo is actually up higher. Now I have to actually trim it back so it'll fit, but I'm gonna wait and get everything else in the way. I'll do the intercooler pipes last this way, I don't have to modify them more than once again. This is the original Y bridge, and it's rough looking, man. It just sits in there, and someone had some RTV on it and stuff, so my buddy in Ohio is gonna ship me another one. I think it's a PPE one, I'm not sure. I'll show you more about that when it gets here. So I've hacked this big ass cross member into tiny pieces. Hopefully, it's still hot. Hopefully it fits. Yeah. Oh well, that fits terribly. Round 3. Looks good enough to me. I'm gonna blast it on there and test fit it. Everybody's wondering if I measured anything at all. No. Well, I wiped it down with a little bit of acetone just so it wouldn't weld like complete poo. I'm gonna tack it on there and see how it looks. It looks pretty okay. Camera died, but we got the trans mount all welded up. We got the shifter connected. The cables ran. We got the old fuel lines ran. They're pretty bent, and now they're ran over by the frame instead of on the transmission, so they don't fit that great. Might have to redo them later, but for now, to fire it up, I think it'll work. I went ahead and re-loomed or put new cover on the harness just to make it look nice. The old one was brittle and falling apart, and to keep the wiring from rubbing anything and shorting out. This whole area is way cleaner. Just a little fuse box, the ECU, and I mounted the TCM where it usually goes on the Silverado, so that worked out pretty well. Here's the same stuff. I just kind of re-loomed it, ran it all the way back, and it looks pretty decent. I might go ahead and mess with this, but I want to get the new Y bridge in, fuel lines. The old ones are cracking up and they don't look very good, so I'm going to replace all these little guys, get everything mounted back the way it's supposed to be. I'm going to cut off the old flange on the original intake and make it go into one of these pipes for the map sensor. I can reuse the flange from the original map sensor because it's in the original intake, and I can cut it out and weld it to these pipes. But the MAF was actually in a plastic intake, so I went ahead and ordered an aluminum one so I can make a new intake and put it right on. I went ahead and I cut down a hose, and I got it to fit, but it's a little short. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but might clamp it down and see what happens. It shouldn't have a ton of pressure, but you never know. It could leak or something. This whole area kind of looks way worse. All the wiring's just jammed up in there. The original key doesn't work anymore because it didn't plug in, so I have the new key sitting here. And also I unbolted the shifter and put the older shifter in from the 06, so it has the tow haul and the manual mode so you can shift it up and down. It should still all work. Here's the newer column with the old shift cable. I had to go ahead and get the old one from the truck, but we're getting pretty close. If I throw a starter in it and I had the fuel lines done and everything, it would fire up, but I'm waiting for parts. This is a piece I need to make work on the new piping. Let's see if we can cut it off and mock it up. I'm not going to mess with the piping yet because the new Y bridge is going to be in a different location. It should be a little more forward because it comes out the front instead of on the top like the LML, but if I can get it ready, then when the time comes, I should be able to slam it together. Easy peasy. This will get cleaned up and basically just drill a hole and weld it up on the side. I did the same thing to that one. Worked out pretty good. Because it's a diesel, it's real greasy and oily, like always. I'm going to clean it up really nice so that it works well when I weld it. Because all the wiring's done on the engine side, I got the grounds on. Basically just gotta hook up the starter wire once the starter is back on. I still have to put in the converter bolts. I'm gonna wait on doing the wiring, pretty much because it runs along the motor and it's all up in the way of the starter, so might as well put the starter on first then run it to it. Basically intercooler pipes, Y bridge, fuel lines, starter, torque converter bolts, and we should be ready to fire this thing up. So basically a few hours worth of work as soon as I get a bunch of parts, also the oil cooler and all that. But yeah, not much left. I'm gonna go take a ride down the road and visit a drive shaft place and see if they can make it cheaper than what I found it online. Hopefully it's good too. Pretty good stopping point on this episode. Everybody, see you next time.